Hello, it's Amy, and I'm back once again with a few more entries from the 1891 published Journal of Emily Shore. This is the diary of a teenage girl in the 1830s, and we are reading about 80 pages in the year 1834, and we're starting today with her entry for Wednesday, September 3rd, 1834. And so she writes, I was awake at 4:15 before sunrise, and I amused myself for an hour in watching the proceedings of the birds. It was a dim twilight at this time, and the whole sky was of a cold blue-gray, except where in the east there was a very faint blush of pink, which became gradually brighter and brighter, till it was a fiery crimson, and the whole east was tinged with a burning gold. When I got up, the cock was crowing, and at 4:30, the little early robin was awake, though it was still almost dark, crying "Turr, turr," and in a short time he was singing sweetly. Then came the blackbirds at 25 minutes to 5. All I saw were hens. 5 minutes after, a rook was flying over the paddock. At about 5 o'clock, a thrush was sitting in the mulberry tree, and then a tomtit began his little whispering note, and a flycatcher his peek-peek. At 5:15, a swallow was singing. I saw no chaffinches, and I suspect them to be very lazy. Chaffinches still continue to go in pairs. I see a great many hen blackbirds, but hardly any males. The nuthatch makes a great noise among the firs. I continue to see the golden-crested wren occasionally. September 6th, Saturday. The golden-crested wren seems to be pretty plentiful in the garden. I have more than once seen 4 or 5 together. This morning they flew into the larch, squeaking and apparently quarreling. I watched them, some of them, for a considerable time, pecking about the branches. At last, as I stood under the tree, I saw one not 2 yards above my head, hanging from a twig, and it did actually sing, and that too very sweetly, though the song was excessively low and soft. Never did I hear it before. White of Selborne did not know that it sung. He said it had only somewhat of a note. Bewick says it is said to have a very melodious song. Moody that it sings early in the year, so that he at least knew it. September 8, Monday. I think it a rather curious property of a mulberry that when it stains anything, a frock for instance, as I have sometimes done, the pink part of the purple washes out easily, while a light blue remains which one can hardly get rid of. Miss Emma Parison told me a curious anecdote of a squirrel which he saw in a nut tree, weighing a good nut and a bad nut, one in each paw, to try by the weight which was good, and the bad ones he invariably dropped, till he had formed a little heap of them at the bottom of the tree, which, when examined, was found to consist entirely of bad nuts. September 19, Friday. This evening was most exquisitely calm and delightful. Not a breath of wind stirred the leaves of a tree, and scarce a cloud was visible in the heavens, while the clear silvery light of the moon contrasted beautifully with the dark shadows of thick foliage. The bats were flying silently about in the twilight before the moon shone forth, and the wakeful robin had not ceased his sweet, plaintive song, while at a distance in the wood sounded the deep hoot of the owl. The occasional falling of the rose leaves, which looked as white as snow in the darkness, added much to the interest of the scene. I could not persuade myself to go to bed, but sat up a long time looking out of my window. And that's interesting that, she would spend a lot of time looking out her windows in September. And this is September 19th. I'm recording this on just a couple of days after that, and I too sometimes find myself looking out the window in the darkness and unwilling to persuade myself to go to bed. But moving on, September 26th, Friday. Amongst the plants which I brought from the bogs on Tuesday was one which had an upright, leafless, undivided stalk, with a pinky bunch of buds at the top. I could find no other specimen, and as it was only in bud, I could not tell what it was. I gathered it, and this morning one of the buds expanded, and I was able to examine it, and found to my great joy that it was the Menethinus trifoliata, or marsh buckbeak, an uncommon plant, and one of the most beautiful of all English flowers. It has but a single undivided stalk, which is thick, succulent, pinkish or flesh-colored, and in my specimen rather serpentine. The leaves grow only at the root, and I could not find them. The flowers grow in a spike-like bunch at the top of the stem, each flower with a pink floral leaf at the base of the pedicel. The class is Pendanteria monogyna. The corolla of each flower is divided into 5 parts. So is the calyx. The flower is pure white above, pinky underneath, but its great beauty is that the petals are shaggy or feathery above, the featherings being pure white and as delicate as possible. The pistil is extremely short and so hidden by the feathering that I could not examine it. The stamens are long, their filaments are pure white, and the anthers black and golden orange. The buds are pink. My specimen was about 6 inches high. It is impossible to conceive the beauty of this flower, and I am very proud to have found it. October 1st, Wednesday. The beautiful weather we have had of late still continues, without the slightest interruption. Every day is alike. The mornings are always very cold. The sunrise is usually bright and red, and sometimes there is a little mist, which, however, always clears up at 8:30 or 9. The rest of the day is uniformly warm and bright, with never a cloud to hide the sun, nor is there ever a breath of wind, so that it is often quite sultry and oppressive, yet the dews are so heavy that in many places we cannot walk on the grass all day through. Then in the evening it grows cooler, and the sun sets in a flood of crimson light. The nights are cold, clear, and starry, with seldom a cloud in the sky. The Milky Way is sometimes to be seen. The grass is quite white with dew. And we have an asterisk, a note on the next sentence here, and this is what the note says. 2 or 3 years after this account of the golden crested wren was expanded into an article which with one or two others appeared in the Penny magazine. The editor of that periodical had, after her death, an idea of publishing her notes on birds in a separate work. So that is an editor's note. In the still noon of a sultry September day, such a September as we have had this year, when not a leaf is stirring and almost every bird has retired from sight into the shadiest thickets, the appearance of the little solitary golden-crested wren, the only creature moving, seems to add singularly to the idea of quiet and silence. Its movements are unlike those of any other bird, except indeed the tomtit. But even that bird does not equal the lightness and airiness of the little wren. It flutters over the tenderest twigs, and sprays like a butterfly, and quivers its tiny wings without the least sound, so that unless you see it, you would not be aware of its presence. It is hardly like a bird, and even the little chirp that it occasionally emits bears more resemblance to that of an insect. October 6, Monday. We continue to have the same weather. This is the 10th day without any interruption to its beauty. This morning has been foggy, but it is as sultry and oppressive as a day in July. But I cannot help thinking rain will come soon. I have finished painting a wreath for September. It contains 9 different sorts of flowers. The cross-leaved heath, the tormentilla, the milfoil, the goldenrod, blue sort of scabious, the wild thyme, the pendicularis, the stinking horehound, and my beautiful buckbean. And goldenrod is probably my favorite fall foliage. I like the leaves on the trees, but there's something about the goldenrod when it gets that really, bright, crisp golden color. And it's to be found, all over Ontario, in the ditches and along the walking trails. This wreath will have a woodlark in the center, that for August, which I have finished, will have a swallow. And in this one are 7 kinds of flowers: the willow herb, the lithium, the nightshade, the rampions, the succory, the lesser century, and the pretty little lilac-colored flower whose name I have forgotten. I saw this afternoon vast flocks of greenfinches and chaffinches twittering and pinking, alighting on a field of stubble and rising with a sound exactly like a rushing wind. Chaffinches mix a good deal with other birds. I have not seen a single swallow or martin since October 2nd, when the swallows were in song. October 8, Wednesday. What helps very much to give the appearance now of autumn is that the swallows, and I believe the martins, are all completely gone. They had been gradually disappearing for about 10 days before October 2, and after that day all had migrated. They added not a little to the liveliness of summer by their songs and graceful movements. They, that is, the chimney swallows, sing quite up to the time of their migration, a fact which seems unknown to white. And we will leave it at that for now. We have a couple more entries in October, and then we are into November of 1834.